Okay, what we've got here is our scorpion foot, and for this texturing tutorial we're going to be texturing this entire scorpion. So if I exit isolation and kind of get a good look at it here, and right now I'm going to turn on the adaptive degradation by hitting my O key, and it's going to make zooming around looking at this a little bit easier. There we go. You can see we got a pretty massive scorpion going here, modeled by Old Blue, and I'm going to start off by texturing the foot for this, just to give you a simple idea of how you would texture. And this method can be applied to basically the rest of the model, and throughout the model we use different methods. So for this one I'm going to right click and isolate. It's going to isolate just my foot, so I can take a look at that, and it makes things run a little bit smoother. And after that I'm going to actually go in and kind of look at this. Okay, so first thing we want to do is add a UVW map modifier, and this is going to give our object a basic set of coordinates. And right now it's set to planar, z-axis, and what I want to do is make this a full square, so I'm going to copy the width and just paste that over in the length. Hit enter. Now the reason I did this is if I undo that and add my unwrap UVW modifier and hit edit, you're going to notice it's kind of elongated. So whenever I go back into my UVW map and actually set that to a square, it's going to keep the right size for a thing. And reset the UVWs, we're going to have the right size for it. So considering this foot is basically the same object, mirrored, so we're going to leave it like that and texture it like that, but the top texture, the top of the texture, is what we're going to look at right now. So if I go into sub-object, select face in my unwrap UVW modifier, or I can right click, select face, I can select the actual top of my model. And I'll leave the sides and everything unselected. There we go. Had to ignore back facing on. Now I can select cylinder, and there we go. I got the top selected. So now I can go back into my edit window, and what I just selected then selected also that part of the mesh. And if you'll notice, that part didn't select, so I'm going to go here and look at why that didn't. And just kind of manually go in and finish selecting that. There we go. Now I'm going to go to Tools and Detach. This will physically detach the top of my model, and this is basically what I want. So now the next thing I can do is actually go in and start flattening this out, and by doing this it'll allow us a lot more control over how this is going to look in the end result. So I'm just going to start grabbing vertices and kind of moving them over, straightening them out. And I'm not being too precise on keeping these straight, because I'm going to use the uniform scale tool, and I'm just going to end up scaling this straight as is. So I'm just wanting to keep these just decently separated, as you'll see here in a second. There we go. Now I can do the same with this part right here. I'm going to use my uniform scale and scale that out straight, well, decently. Rotate that, move it up. Do the same thing with this, long ways. Should be good enough. There we go. And do the same thing with this part. we go. Now I can grab the entire thing and scale that down. There we go. Now I can go to mapping, normal mapping, back and front, and this will cut it up into separate parts. So if I look in here closely, I can find each little vertice. That's giving me trouble right now. Just like those. And one more. There we go. I move those out of the way. I'm going to weld everything. And I'm going to do the same thing for this, except this one I'm going to do a little bit different of a method. I'm going to go down here and select polygon. And select those and just move those over. I'm going to select all these and deselect that one. Move those down. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of line all these up. I'm going to mirror that one using the mirror button. Grab this, drag it over there. Select these. Those right there. Select these, move that right there. Weld selected. There we go. Now I can scale this down. And I have the entire front face. So if I go through and select just this part, you'll notice which part is selected. And this one looks like it is out of place. So what we are looking for is this one right here, directly opposite of it. Okay, there we go. Now we got our map set up for our foot. Now, to actually render out a texture to this, what we're going to use is a new feature, new to version 5, which is render to texture. And this was, I believe, made to render out nice lighting on a texture map that you've already textured. But another use for this actual piece is to render out a texture map to draw on in whatever painting program you decide to use. So I'm going to go ahead and save my UVW changes, and I will save them as foot. There we go. And yes, I want to replace it. And then I'm going to go to rendering, render to texture, and in here I have quite a few options, but the only ones we're going to mess with right now will be the alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to set the path, C:\\, let's not set that. Let's set it to F:\\scorpion. And this is where we'll set all our maps, and I'm going to add a diffuse map. Go ahead and add that in there, set it to 1024. It's going to be the size of our map, and I don't want to render lighting or shadows. Automatic unwrap UVW is turned off, and right now we do not have the render option. So I'm going to go back into rendering, render to texture. And apparently it's not going to want to work. Let's just look at our settings. Skip existing files, we don't want that on. Render settings, no presets. We can turn that on if we want. We'll just have to load our map in the automatic UVW modifier it adds. I'm going to enable the diffuse map. I don't want to use an automatic map size. I'm going to use 1024. And I'm going to save source, create shell, duplicate source to baked. Let's go ahead and set unwrap only. And I'll load the foot UVW we just set. And it is still not going to let me render that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to reload Max, because this should be letting me render this out. And if you were doing this from the start, it would let you render it out. I'm not sure why it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and restart Max here real quick. Okay, what I've done here is basically reset Max, and I figured out mental ray was what was messing this up. So I went ahead and I went to my current renderers and assigned my default render, and now I can actually render out this map that I've set up previously. So what this will do is, with automatic unwrap unchecked, it will render out my map as I have it right now. So if I have automatic unwrap, if I have that turned on, it's actually going to unwrap a version. If I hit render, yes, I'll override. It's actually going to render out, well, it didn't auto unwrap it, and this would be because I already loaded the other one. So if I had this removed and I was just now about to render the texture, it would actually unwrap the model like this. And to get rid of this, what you want to do is go into your automatic flatten UVs, which is the one that rendered the texture added, and load the foot. And then you will get the results we saw just here a second ago. Now, after I do this, I can go in and go into Photoshop and start texturing this, or start painting on top of this. And this will get a material going on both sides of this, and then on the top of the entire object. And in part 2 we'll go over and we'll try and unwrap the shin of the scorpion, and doing the same basic method, and then later on we'll go through Photoshop and we'll add the textures, and then we'll apply them to the objects.